So, we're starting the school year off in the grand American tradition, aren't we? Another massacre of school children. And we know how this ends. We know where this comes to, right? We've seen this movie. We're going to get the thoughts and prayers people, and then we're going to get the people who are upset about the thoughts and prayers because clearly thoughts and prayers aren't working here. So just shut the fuck up about the thoughts and prayers. Then we're going to have the serious people are going to talk about mental health, right? Hey, mental health. It's a mental health. We have to invest in mental health. We're not going to invest in mental health. That means investing in mental health. That means spending money on people, and we don't do that in the United States. So, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're just going to blame TikTok and cell phone culture. Because every other country in the world doesn't have cell phones. It's a schizophrenic carousel ride, going around and around, over and over again, arriving at the same place every fucking time. And in the meantime, guns have become the leading cause of death among American children. Rinse and repeat. So I've actually stopped writing about this topic on the Mad Sociologist blog because I find that if I do, then I'm just going to be rewriting the same piece over and over and over again because we're on the damn carousel. So when the carousel comes around, I usually just shoot off the same thing I wrote 10 years ago. Now, 10 years ago, I did write a piece that I think actually has stood the test of time, and I think maybe it can be valuable in this discussion. So I want to kind of go over it here. It's called Getting Off the Mass Shooting Carousel, in which I identify 4 variables that are recurring themes in mass shootings in the United States. 4 variables. I did a content analysis of the news articles and reports on mass shootings up to that time. And I found 4 variables that are recurring over and over. And these 4 variables do overlap. And I think if we look closely, there is an underlying theme, which we may get into in another video because this one will last too long. So what are those 4 variables? The 4 variables that I identified are, first, transcendent values. The people who commit these mass violence events are oftentimes driven by transcendent values. So what does that mean? Transcendent values, people who are driven by transcendent values are people who are driven by some kind of a higher calling. So usually these are your folks who are driven by fundamentalist religious beliefs or political extremism and extremist ideology. And so they believe that the violence that they are doing is in the cause of some higher good. These are transcendent values, right? We see this from religious terrorist attacks or attacks on abortion clinics, these transcendent values, right? The next one is isolation, social isolation. Invariably, when we see the perpetrators of mass violence, mass shootings, these are people who are experiencing some form of social isolation. Now, I don't know about this current issue. I've not really read too much on it. I've kind of browsed it. I found that you really don't get good information on traumatic events like this until at least a few days after the event, where a little bit of introspection can be added. But so I don't know if this is the case in this particular moment. But it wouldn't surprise me if we find out that the shooter, in this case, was experiencing some form of social isolation. This social isolation can come from many, directions, right? This may be a case where you have an individual who has never quite fit in, who has a difficult time forming social connections and social contacts, and therefore has experienced social isolation. These may be people who are stigmatized, and isolated from being able to form those social attachments. They may be people who had social contacts and social networks and then were somehow removed from those social networks. They were somehow cut off from those social networks. And these may also be people who, for whatever reason, have withdrawn from their social contacts. They've done it voluntarily. Again, this can overlap with the transcendent values as well, because groups promoting these transcendent values, often extremist views, one of their strategies is to find people who are socially isolated and bring them on board. And hey, You have a home here, and all you have to do is embrace this extremist ideology. And we'll do it, because human beings don't like to be socially isolated. So social isolation is a recurring theme in one way or another in almost all of these mass shooting events. Not all of them, but almost all of them, enough to stand out. Now, the next two variables we want to talk about are problematic variables. These are the variables that your social media Orwell bots that patrol the algorithm and block videos from being shared. These are the things that the Orwell bots don't like, because they're woke, and we can't allow a woke thought to spread throughout cyberspace. So the Orwell bots take control here. So if you find this information valuable, please share, please like, please do the things to try to get past the Orwell bots on this, and I would really appreciate it. But the other two variables are troubled masculinity and access to guns. We cannot ignore the fact that mass shooters are almost invariably men. What is going on in American masculinity, American manhood? There is a crisis. We cannot continue to ignore this, right? And now, again, this can overlap with the transcendent values and the social isolation. Since I wrote that piece, there has been a lot of social psychological research and sociological research and psychology and psychiatry that has come out and shown how American men are uniquely isolating themselves, or isolated, right? American friendships, close friendships among American men are declining. American male participation in social groups and activist organizations and professional groups is declining. And American men are more and more isolated. Again, making those American men more vulnerable to groups promoting those transcendent values. You're seeing the overlap here. And then the last variable is access to guns. The United States is uniquely awash in guns. I have done correlations and regressions with international comparisons in which I've had to exclude the United States, because the data for the United States gun ownership is so much of an outlier that it distorts the data for the rest of the world. That's how awash in guns we are. And the idea from the promoters of guns is that we need these guns to make us safe. It's not working. If guns made us safe, the United States would be the safest country in the world. But it's not. So, I got a couple minutes. What is an underlying theme that may be tying all four of these variables together? And I don't know, I've not dug into this as much as maybe I should, but I'm going to hypothesize something. And I think it has to do with fear. I think it has to do with uncertainty. I think in the United States, we promote a culture of fear, especially among American men. Fear that they're being replaced, fear that they're being disrespected, fear that their neighbors are out to get them. And when you tie all of these variables together with fear and uncertainty, and combine that with factors that weaken a man's sense of identity, we have a crisis. And then you put guns in the hands of that crisis, and you've got a catastrophe waiting to happen. You've got somebody pulling the lever on that carousel. And the only way that carousel stops is if we look at these variables, we actually do something about it, and we switch the lever off. Will this be different? No. No. Can we start?